Have you ever wondered how many incredible places have been completely forgotten by time? A village buried beneath the sand, a city standing high above the cliffs, a fortress guarding the edge of an empire, an entire community frozen beneath volcanic ash, and ancient carvings that have survived for tens of thousands of years. These aren't legends, they're real places that continue to challenge what we know about the past. So tonight, we'll journey across deserts, mountains, coastlines, and forgotten civilizations to uncover remarkable places that history almost left behind. Before we begin, tell me in the comments which ancient civilization fascinates you most. And if you enjoy these mysteries, please like and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's explore the forgotten places that still refuse to give up their secrets. Skara Brae, the village hidden beneath the sand. On a remote island off the northern coast of Scotland lies a village older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids of Egypt, and for thousands of years nobody knew it was there. Beneath grassy dunes and windswept fields, an entire prehistoric community slept in silence, hidden from the world. Today, we know this place as Skara Brae, and it remains one of the best preserved Stone Age settlements ever discovered. The story of its discovery begins with a storm. In the winter of 1850, powerful winds battered the Orkney Islands. Waves crashed against the coastline. Sand and earth were stripped away from the landscape. When the storm finally passed, local residents noticed something unusual emerging from the ground. Stone walls, passageways, rooms, the remains of an ancient settlement that had been hidden for thousands of years. It was as though the sea itself had uncovered a forgotten chapter of human history. Imagine arriving here around 3000 BC. The North Atlantic stretches endlessly beyond the shore. The wind carries the scent of salt and seaweed. Nearby, families move between stone houses built close together for protection against the harsh climate. Smoke rises from hearth fires. Children play near the entrances. People prepare food, repair tools, and go about their daily lives. This is not a temporary camp. It is a thriving community, a place people called home. One of the most remarkable things about Skara Brae is how modern it feels. The houses were carefully designed. Stone furniture still survives inside many of them. Beds, shelves, storage compartments, even stone dressers positioned directly opposite the entrance. Walking through the settlement today feels less like visiting ruins, and more like stepping into a home whose owners simply left and never returned. The buildings were connected by covered passageways that allowed residents to move between homes, while remaining protected from the weather. In a region known for strong winds and long winters, such features made perfect sense. Every detail suggests careful planning and generations of experience adapting to life on the edge of the North Atlantic. Imagine sitting beside one of the hearths as darkness falls outside. The fire crackles softly. Voices echo through the stone room. Beyond the walls, the ocean crashes against the shore. Life is simple compared to the modern world, but it is far from primitive. The people of Skara Brae understood construction, community and survival in ways perfectly suited to their environment. Yet many mysteries remain. Who exactly were these people? What stories did they tell? What beliefs shaped their lives? The settlement existed long before written history reached Scotland. No records survive. No names have been preserved. Only the traces of everyday life remain. And perhaps that is what makes the site so fascinating. Unlike great palaces or royal tombs, Skara Brae offers a glimpse into the lives of ordinary people, the farmers, the craftsmen, the families who woke each morning to the sound of the sea. For centuries the village prospered. Generation after generation lived within its stone walls. Then, sometime around 2500 BC, the settlement was abandoned. Why remains uncertain. Climate change may have played a role. Powerful storms may have altered the coastline. Resources may have become more difficult to obtain. No one knows for sure. Whatever happened, the villagers eventually left. The houses fell silent. Sand slowly covered the settlement, and over time, the world forgot it existed. For more than 4,000 years, Skara Brae remained hidden beneath the landscape. Empires rose and fell. Kingdoms appeared and disappeared. Entire chapters of history unfolded. Yet beneath the dunes, the ancient village waited. Today, visitors from around the world come to see Skara Brae for themselves. Many arrive expecting a simple archaeological site. Instead, they find something much more personal. A place where ancient lives still feel surprisingly close. A place where stone beds, hearths and homes tell a story that words never recorded. And perhaps that is what makes Skara Brae so remarkable. Because on a remote Scottish island lies a village that allows us to step back 5,000 years and glimpse the everyday lives of people who would otherwise be completely forgotten. A village hidden beneath the sand. A village preserved by time, and a village that continues to share its story with anyone willing to listen. Blaundos, the lost city on the edge of the cliffs. Hidden among the rugged highlands of western Turkey lies an ancient city that seems almost impossible. A city surrounded by deep canyons, a city protected by towering cliffs, a city so isolated that even today, reaching it feels like discovering a forgotten world. This place is known as Blaundos, and for centuries it stood high above the landscape, watching empires rise and fall far below. At first glance, the location seems strange. Most ancient cities were built beside rivers, fertile valleys, or major trade routes. Blaundos was different. It occupied a rocky plateau surrounded by steep ravines on nearly every side. From above, the city almost resembles an island. Except instead of water, it is surrounded by vast canyons carved into the earth. Imagine approaching Blaundos more than 2,000 years ago. The journey is difficult. Narrow roads wind through the hills. The terrain becomes steeper. Then suddenly the city appears. Stone buildings rise above the cliffs. Walls stand guard over the plateau. Beyond them, endless valleys stretch toward the horizon. The location is breathtaking. But it is also practical. Any approaching army would have faced enormous challenges reaching the city. Nature itself served as a fortress. Blaundos was founded during the Hellenistic period, in the years following the campaigns of Alexander the Great. According to ancient sources, Macedonian settlers eventually established a community here, bringing with them traditions from a rapidly changing world. Over time, the settlement grew. New buildings appeared, trade connections expanded, and the city became part of the wider network of the ancient Mediterranean. Imagine walking through its streets during its height. Merchants display goods brought from distant regions. Craftsmen work in workshops carved into stone. Families gather in courtyards. Children run through narrow streets lined with houses. The city is alive with movement, alive with conversation, alive with possibility. One of the most remarkable aspects of Blaundos is how much of it remained hidden for centuries. Unlike famous ancient cities that attracted travellers and historians, Blaundos slowly faded from memory. Its remote location protected it, but it also isolated it. As a result, many of its secrets remained untouched for generations. Recent archaeological discoveries have revealed just how impressive the city once was. Researchers have uncovered temples, public buildings, ancient streets, and elaborate tombs carved directly into the surrounding cliffs. Some of these tombs remain remarkably well preserved. Their entrances stare out across the valleys below, just as they did thousands of years ago. Imagine standing at the edge of one of those cliffs. The wind moves across the canyon, birds circle far below. The landscape stretches endlessly in every direction. For the people buried here, the location must have carried deep meaning, a final resting place overlooking the world they once knew. One of the most fascinating discoveries at Blaundos involves underground structures hidden beneath the city. Ancient chambers, tunnels, and storage spaces reveal a settlement far more complex than it first appears. Every excavation uncovers something new. Every season of research adds another piece to the puzzle. And yet, much of the city remains unexplored. That uncertainty gives Blaundos a special kind of mystery. Unlike many famous archaeological sites, researchers are still uncovering major discoveries here. The story is still being written. Imagine the city during sunset. Golden light spreads across the cliffs. Shadows stretch through the streets. The sounds of daily life slowly fade. People return to their homes. Fires begin to glow behind stone walls. And high above the valleys, Blaundos watches over the landscape as it has for centuries. But no city lasts forever. Eventually trade routes changed. Political power shifted. New centres emerged elsewhere. The population slowly declined. Buildings were abandoned. The streets grew quiet, and the city that had once thrived on the edge of the cliffs gradually slipped into silence. Nature began reclaiming what people had built. Grass covered the stones, Walls collapsed. The world moved on. For centuries the city remained largely forgotten. Empires came and went, kingdoms rose and fell, yet Blaundos stayed hidden among the hills, protected by the same cliffs that had once defended it. Today, visitors who reach the site often find themselves amazed not only by the ruins, but by the setting itself. It feels remote, timeless, almost untouched, a place where history lingers in the silence. And perhaps that is what makes Blaundos so fascinating, because high above the valleys of western Turkey stands a city that refused to disappear completely. A city built on the edge of the cliffs, a city guarded by the landscape itself, and a city whose greatest secrets may still be waiting beneath the stones, ready to be uncovered once more. Zerzevan Castle, the fortress that guarded the edge of an empire. On a lonely hilltop in southeastern Turkey stand the ruins of a fortress that once guarded one of the most dangerous frontiers in the ancient world. For centuries, soldiers watched the horizon from its walls. Messengers arrived carrying news from distant lands. Armies marched across the surrounding plains, and beneath the fortress itself, hidden from the world, lay a mysterious underground temple whose secrets remained buried for nearly 2,000 years. This place is known as Zerzevan Castle, and few archaeological sites have revealed as many surprises in recent years. At first glance, Zerzevan appears to be a typical ancient fortress. Stone walls stretch across the hilltop, watchtowers overlook the landscape, ruined buildings stand where soldiers and civilians once lived. But appearances can be deceiving, because this was not merely a castle, it was a military outpost standing at the edge of two rival worlds. Imagine arriving here around the 4th century AD. The Roman Empire still controls vast territories stretching across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Yet peace is never guaranteed. To the east lies the powerful Persian Empire. For generations, the two civilizations compete for territory, influence and control of important trade routes, and standing directly between them is Zerzevan. The fortress occupies a commanding position. From its walls, soldiers can observe the surrounding countryside for miles in every direction. Any approaching army would be spotted long before reaching the gates. The location was chosen carefully. This hilltop offered security, visibility, and strategic importance, everything a frontier fortress needed. Imagine the daily life of the people who lived here. Roman soldiers patrol the walls, blacksmiths repair weapons and armour, merchants arrive carrying supplies, families live alongside military personnel within the fortified settlement, children play in courtyards while guards keep watch from towers above. Life here is shaped by uncertainty. The possibility of conflict is never far away. Yet perhaps the most remarkable discovery at Zerzevan remained hidden beneath the ground. For centuries nobody knew it existed. Then archaeologists uncovered an underground sanctuary, unlike anything else at the site. A temple dedicated to Mithras, the mysterious god worshipped by members of a secretive Roman cult. The discovery shocked researchers, because temples dedicated to Mithras are relatively rare, especially in this region. Imagine descending into the chamber nearly 1800 years ago. Torches flicker against stone walls. The air is cool and quiet. Members of the cult gather in secrecy. Ceremonies take place beyond the eyes of the outside world. The details of their beliefs remain largely unknown. The cult left behind few written records. Most of what historians know comes from archaeological discoveries. That mystery only adds to the fascination. Why was a Mithric temple built inside a frontier fortress? Who participated in its ceremonies? And what role did it play in the lives of the soldiers stationed here? Many questions remain unanswered. Yet the discoveries at Zerzevan do not end there. Excavations have revealed churches, defensive walls, homes, water systems, underground shelters, and military structures. Each season of archaeological work uncovers new evidence about life on Rome's eastern frontier. It is a reminder that the fortress was more than a military installation. It was a living community, a place where people worked, worshipped, and built their lives. Imagine standing atop the fortress walls as evening approaches. The sun sinks toward the horizon. Long shadows stretch across the plains. A guard scans the distance for signs of movement. Below, life continues within the settlement. Fires burn, conversations drift through the streets. The fortress feels secure, but everyone understands its purpose: to protect the frontier, to watch the border, to stand ready if danger appears. For centuries, Zerzevan fulfilled that role. Empires changed, Wars came and went, the fortress endured. Then eventually political power shifted elsewhere. The frontier moved. Its strategic importance faded. The settlement was gradually abandoned. The walls remained, but the people left. Over time, nature reclaimed the hilltop. Buildings collapsed. The fortress fell silent, and for generations its stories remained hidden beneath the earth. Today, archaeologists continue uncovering new secrets at Zerzevan Castle. Every excavation reveals another piece of its forgotten past. How many soldiers served here? What happened inside the Mithric temple? And what other discoveries still wait beneath the ruins? Some answers have emerged. Many remain buried. But perhaps that uncertainty is what makes Zerzevan so captivating. Because high above the plains of southeastern Turkey stands a fortress that once guarded the edge of an empire. A fortress of soldiers, secrets, and hidden temples. And a fortress that continues to reveal its mysteries nearly 2,000 years after its walls first rose above the frontier. Joya de Cerén, the village frozen in time. Most ancient archaeological sites tell us about kings, about rulers, about grand temples and powerful empires. But very few tell us about ordinary people, the farmers, the families, the children, the people who lived everyday lives far from the centres of power. That is what makes Joya de Cerén so extraordinary. Hidden beneath the soil of El Salvador lies an ancient village preserved so perfectly that archaeologists often call it the Pompeii of the Americas. Yet unlike Pompeii, this was not a city of wealthy elites. It was a farming community, a place where ordinary people lived, worked and dreamed nearly 1,400 years ago. Imagine arriving here around 600 AD. The landscape is green and fertile. Fields stretch across the countryside. Farmers tend crops beneath the warm Central American sun. Children run between houses made of earth and thatch. Smoke rises from cooking fires. Life feels peaceful, predictable, normal. No one knows that everything is about to change. The people of Joya de Cerén belong to the Maya world, but this was not a great ceremonial centre filled with towering pyramids. It was something far rarer, a snapshot of everyday life. The kind of place history usually forgets. Imagine walking through the village. Families prepare meals, tools rest beside doorways. Storage buildings contain food harvested from nearby fields. Gardens grow vegetables and medicinal plants. The community is busy, but calm. The routines of daily life continue as they always have. Then disaster strikes. Nearby, the Loma Caldera volcano erupts. Ash begins falling from the sky. The ground trembles. People realize they must leave immediately. There is no time to gather possessions, no time to carefully prepare. They simply run. And somehow, that sudden escape created one of archaeology's greatest discoveries. Layer after layer of volcanic ash covered the village. Buildings disappeared, fields vanished, tools, food, and household objects were buried exactly where they had been left. The village was sealed away from the world. For centuries, nobody knew it existed. Imagine the final moments before the eruption. A cooking pot sits near a fire. Farming tools lean against a wall. Food remains stored inside buildings. Then everyone leaves. The village falls silent, and for more than 1,000 years, nothing changes. Everything remains exactly where it was. That level of preservation is incredibly rare. Most ancient settlements are altered by weather, later construction, looting, or simple passage of time. Joya de Cerén escaped all of that. The volcanic ash protected it, preserved it, almost froze it in time. When archaeologists eventually uncovered the site in the 20th century, they were astonished. This was not simply another ruined settlement. It was a direct window into everyday life. Researchers discovered homes, kitchens, workshops, storage buildings, gardens, and even traces of crops growing in the fields. For perhaps the first time, archaeologists could study how ordinary Maya villagers actually lived. Imagine entering one of the preserved buildings. Tools remain where they were last used. Containers still sit in their original positions. The layout of daily life becomes visible in a way that is almost never possible at ancient sites. It feels less like archaeology, and more like stepping into a home whose owners had only recently left. One of the most fascinating discoveries involved food. Researchers found evidence of crops, stored supplies, and cooking areas that revealed what people ate and how they prepared meals. These details may seem small compared to kings and monuments, but they tell a human story. a story about real people living real lives. And that is what makes Joya de Cerén so special. For centuries, history often focused on rulers and warriors. Joya de Cerén focuses on everyone else. The families who planted crops, the people who cooked meals, the workers who built homes, the villagers who woke each morning expecting an ordinary day. Yet despite everything archaeologists have learned, questions remain. Did everyone escape safely? Where did they go after the eruption? Did they ever return to see what had happened to their village? No one knows for certain. The volcanic ash preserved their homes, but it could not preserve their stories. Today, Joya de Cerén remains one of the most remarkable archaeological sites in the Americas. Not because of enormous monuments, not because of royal tombs, but because it offers something far rarer. A chance to see the ancient world through the eyes of ordinary people. A village frozen in time, a village abandoned in a single moment, and a village that continues to tell the story of lives that history almost forgot forever. Fuerte de Samaipata, the mountain carved into stone, high in the foothills of Bolivia, stands one of the most unusual archaeological sites in the world. It is not a city, it is not a temple, and it is not a fortress in the way most people imagine. Instead, it is a gigantic rock. A single, massive sandstone ridge carved by human hands into shapes, channels, platforms, and mysterious designs, whose purpose is still debated today. This place is known as Fuerte de Samaipata, and even after centuries of study, many of its secrets remain hidden within the stone itself. Imagine approaching the site more than 1,000 years ago. The mountains rise around you, clouds drift across the distant valleys. Then, emerging from the landscape, you see an enormous rock unlike anything else in the region. Its surface is covered with carvings. Long grooves cut through the stone. Geometric shapes appear where nature never would have placed them. The entire mountain seems transformed, as though someone attempted to turn the landscape itself into a monument. The first thing visitors notice is the scale. The carved rock stretches across a vast area. This was not the work of a few individuals. It required generations of effort, countless hours of labour, and a purpose important enough to justify reshaping part of a mountain. Yet exactly what that purpose was remains uncertain. Imagine standing on the rock during its height. Priests, leaders, or travellers gather around the carved surfaces. Ceremonies may be taking place. Offerings may be presented. Voices echo across the surrounding hills. The site overlooks an important crossroads between different regions of South America. For centuries, people from different cultures passed through this landscape, and many likely left their mark upon it. One reason Fuerte de Samaipata fascinates archaeologists is that it was used by multiple civilizations. Long before the Inca Empire expanded into the region, other groups occupied the site. Later, the Incas arrived and incorporated it into their growing realm. Each culture added new layers to its story. Each contributed to the mystery. And because of that long history, understanding the site has never been simple. Perhaps the most intriguing feature is the rock itself. Some carvings resemble channels flowing across the surface. Others appear ceremonial. Some researchers believe certain areas were connected to religious rituals. Others suggest astronomical observations may have played a role. The truth remains uncertain. The builders left no explanation behind. Only the carvings remain, silent and weathered after centuries beneath the Bolivian sky. Imagine sunrise at Samaipata. The first light spreads across the stone. Shadows fill the carved grooves. Patterns emerge across the surface that seem to change with the movement of the sun. It is easy to understand why ancient people may have considered this place special. The mountain itself feels alive with mystery. Yet the story of Samaipata was not always peaceful. Its strategic location made it valuable. Different groups competed for control of the region. Conflicts occurred. Fortifications were constructed nearby. And over time, the site became connected not only to religion and ceremony, but also to power and defense. Eventually, the great civilizations that used Samaipata disappeared. The ceremonies ended. The roads grew quiet. The carved mountain remained. Wind and rain slowly weathered its surface. Plants began growing between ancient carvings. The world moved on. Yet the stone endured. For centuries, travellers encountered the site and wondered who had created it. Even today, archaeologists continue uncovering new clues. Why was such a massive carving project undertaken? What rituals took place here? How did different civilizations use the site across the centuries? Some answers have emerged. Many mysteries remain. But perhaps that uncertainty is what makes Fuerte de Samaipata so captivating, because high in the mountains of Bolivia stands a monument unlike almost any other on Earth. Not a building constructed upon the landscape, but the landscape itself transformed into a monument, a mountain carved by human hands, a place shaped by multiple civilizations, and a place whose greatest secrets may still be hidden within the stone. Persepolis, Iran. The city built for kings. At the foot of distant mountains in southern Iran lie the remains of a city that was never meant to be ordinary. It was not built for farmers, it was not built for merchants, and it was not built for everyday life. Instead, it was created to impress the world. A city of grand staircases, towering columns, and magnificent halls designed to showcase the power of one of history's greatest empires. This place is known as Persepolis, and even in ruins it remains one of the most breathtaking archaeological sites on Earth. Imagine arriving here more than 2,500 years ago. The Persian Empire stretches across vast territories. Its borders reach from Egypt to Central Asia. Dozens of peoples, languages, and cultures exist under its rule, and standing at the heart of this enormous empire is Persepolis. As you approach the city, the first thing you notice is its immense stone platform rising above the surrounding plain. Wide staircases lead upward. Massive walls dominate the landscape. Everything about the city is designed to inspire awe. Visitors arriving from distant provinces would immediately understand they had entered the centre of imperial power. Imagine climbing those great staircases. Officials, diplomats, and representatives from across the empire make the same journey. Some bring gold. Others carry rare animals, textiles, or precious gifts. Delegations arrive from lands hundreds or even thousands of miles away. Each comes to pay respect to the Persian king, and Persepolis serves as the perfect stage for these ceremonies. The city was founded by the Persian king Darius the Great around 518 BC. But it was not completed during his lifetime. Successive rulers expanded the complex for generations. Each added new palaces, halls, and monuments. The result was one of the most ambitious construction projects of the ancient world. One of the most remarkable features of Persepolis is its artwork. The stone walls are covered with detailed carvings. Rows of figures move across the surfaces. Representatives from different nations bring gifts to the king. Soldiers stand proudly in formation. Animals, flowers, and symbolic designs appear throughout the complex. Unlike many ancient monuments, these carvings do not focus entirely on warfare. Instead, they emphasize unity, ceremony, and the vast diversity of the empire. Imagine standing inside the Apadana, the great audience hall. Its roof is supported by towering columns. Sunlight enters through enormous openings. Officials gather beneath ceilings that soar high above them. The room is filled with voices from every corner of the empire. Different languages mix together. Different traditions meet in one place. Persepolis is not merely a city. It is a symbol of imperial authority. A place designed to represent an empire unlike any the world had seen before. Yet despite its beauty, Persepolis would not stand forever. In 330 BC, a young conqueror arrived from the west. His name was Alexander the Great. After defeating the Persian Empire, his forces entered the city. What happened next remains one of the most dramatic moments in ancient history. A fire broke out. Flames spread through parts of the royal complex. Wooden roofs collapsed. Palaces burned. Whether the destruction was deliberate, accidental, or a mixture of both remains debated by historians. But the result was the same. The glorious city was devastated. Imagine watching the flames consume buildings that had taken generations to construct. Columns illuminated by fire, smoke rising into the night sky, the heart of an empire disappearing before your eyes. Although parts of Persepolis survived, the city never fully recovered. The empire that created it was gone. The ceremonies ended, the royal courts vanished, and gradually the once great capital fell silent. For centuries the ruins stood beneath the Iranian sun. Travellers passed by and wondered who had built such a place. Legends grew around the site. Stories replaced facts. The memory of Persepolis slowly faded into mystery. yet the stones endured. Today, visitors can still walk among the columns, still climb the staircases, still see the carvings left behind by artisans more than 2,000 years ago. And perhaps that is what makes Persepolis so fascinating, because unlike many ancient cities, it was built not simply as a place to live, but as a statement of power, of ambition, of empire, and even in ruins that message remains visible. High on its stone platform surrounded by mountains and desert, Persepolis continues to tell the story of kings, conquerors, and one of the greatest civilizations the ancient world ever produced. Lalibela, the church is carved from the earth. High in the mountains of Ethiopia lies a place that seems almost impossible. At first glance, you may not even notice it. There are no towering cathedrals rising above the landscape, no massive walls visible from miles away. Instead, the greatest structures are hidden below ground, carved directly into solid rock, not built stone by stone, but cut downward into the earth itself. This place is known as Lalibela, and it remains one of the most extraordinary religious sites ever created. Imagine arriving here more than 800 years ago. The Ethiopian highlands stretch toward the horizon. The air is cool. The mountains stand silent. Then, as you approach the settlement, something remarkable appears. Deep trenches cut through the rock. Passageways descend into the ground, and within those trenches stand enormous churches carved from single pieces of stone. It feels less like architecture and more like sculpture on a monumental scale. The most famous story tells of a king named Gebre Meskel Lalibela, who dreamed of creating a new Jerusalem in Ethiopia. Whether every detail of that story is true remains uncertain. But what is certain is that an astonishing construction project took place here during the medieval period. Workers carved entire churches from the living rock, not by stacking blocks together, but by removing everything around them. Imagine the challenge. First, builders cut deep trenches into solid stone. Then they carefully carved the church from the remaining rock. Every doorway, every window, every column, every wall, all created from a single mass of stone. One mistake could ruin years of work, yet somehow they succeeded. The result is unlike anything else in the world. Imagine standing beside one of these churches. The walls rise around you. The stone is cool beneath your hand. Above, the edge of the surrounding ground reminds you that the entire structure exists below the surface. It feels hidden, protected, almost secret. One of the most famous churches is Bet Georgis, or the Church of St. George. Seen from above, its roof forms a giant cross carved into the stone. The structure appears as though it has been lowered into the earth by some impossible force. Even today, visitors often struggle to believe it was created centuries ago using simple tools and determination. Yet Lalibela is more than a collection of churches. It is a living place of worship. Pilgrims still travel here. Religious ceremonies still take place. Ancient traditions continue within spaces carved hundreds of years ago. That continuity makes the site feel different from many archaeological ruins. It is not merely a monument to the past. It remains part of the present. Imagine visiting during a religious festival. Thousands of worshippers dressed in white gather among the churches. Prayers echo through stone passageways. Candles flicker in the darkness. The same rituals performed by generations continue once again. The connection between past and present feels almost unbroken. Yet many mysteries remain. How many workers participated in the construction? How long did the project take? What techniques allowed medieval builders to achieve such precision? The answers are not always clear. The builders left behind their work, but not every detail of how they accomplished it. For centuries, stories attempted to explain the achievement. Some legends claimed angels helped construct the churches during the night. Others believed divine guidance made the project possible. Whether taken literally or not, such stories reveal the sense of wonder the site has inspired for generations, and it is easy to understand why. Even today, Lalibela feels extraordinary, a place where faith, engineering, and determination came together to create something truly unique. As the centuries passed, kingdoms rose and fell across Africa and beyond. Trade routes shifted, empires appeared and disappeared, yet the churches of Lalibela remained, protected by the mountains, protected by devotion, protected by the people who continued to care for them. And perhaps that is what makes Lalibela so remarkable. Because hidden within the Ethiopian highlands stands a place unlike any other, a place where churches were carved from the earth itself, a place where history and faith remain intertwined, and a place that continues to inspire, all more than 800 years after the first stone was cut away. Mesa Verde, the city built into the cliffs, hidden among the sandstone canyons of the American Southwest, lies a place that seems almost impossible. A city built not on top of the land, but inside it. Homes tucked beneath towering cliffs. Entire communities sheltered within natural alcoves high above the canyon floor. From a distance, it looks as though the buildings are part of the rock itself. This place is known as Mesa Verde, and it remains one of the most extraordinary archaeological sites in North America. Imagine standing here more than 700 years ago. The landscape stretches endlessly beneath a bright desert sky. Deep canyons cut through the earth. Juniper and pinyon trees dot the hillsides, and hidden within the cliffs are thriving communities where families have lived for generations. Smoke drifts from rooftops. Voices echo through stone passageways. Children move between homes built high above the valley floor. Life flourishes in a place few outsiders would ever expect. The people who built Mesa Verde were the ancestors of today's Pueblo peoples. For centuries they lived across the region, farming crops such as corn, beans, and squash. Their communities grew and evolved over time. At first, many lived in villages on top of the mesas. Then, sometime during the late 1100s and 1200s, something remarkable happened. Large numbers of people began constructing homes within the cliffs themselves. Imagine the effort involved. Stone blocks must be shaped and carried into position. Wooden beams transported across rugged terrain. Walls carefully assembled beneath massive rock overhangs. Room after room takes shape. Eventually entire villages emerge from the cliff face. One of the most famous is known as Cliff Palace. With more than 100 rooms and numerous ceremonial spaces, it is the largest cliff dwelling in North America. Standing before it today feels almost unreal. The buildings appear suspended between earth and sky, protected by the natural shelter of the canyon wall, perfectly positioned to blend into the landscape. Imagine approaching Cliff Palace during its height. Ladders connect different levels. Families prepare meals. Pottery is crafted by skilled hands. Ceremonies take place in circular rooms known as kivas. The settlement is busy with activity. Far from being isolated ruins, these were vibrant communities filled with life. One of the great mysteries of Mesa Verde is why people moved into the cliffs in the first place. Some researchers believe defense may have played a role. Others point to environmental changes, social factors, or shifting traditions. The truth is likely complex. The people who built these settlements left no written explanation behind. Only the structures themselves remain, and those structures continue to raise questions. Imagine standing at the edge of the canyon at sunset. Golden light illuminates the stone walls. Long shadows stretch across the cliffs. From below, the villages seem almost hidden, protected from harsh weather, protected from the outside world. It is easy to understand why these locations were chosen. Yet even more fascinating is the precision of the construction. The builders adapted perfectly to the natural contours of the rock. Every wall, doorway and room fits into the landscape with remarkable skill. The cliffs were not obstacles. They were part of the design. For generations, life continued here. Families raised children, farmers harvested crops, communities gathered for ceremonies and celebrations. Then, sometime in the late 1200s, the cliff dwellings were abandoned. The reasons remain one of the greatest mysteries in North American archaeology. A prolonged drought may have made farming increasingly difficult. Resources may have become scarce. Social and political changes may have encouraged migration elsewhere. Perhaps several factors combined together. Whatever happened, the people eventually left. The villages fell silent. The ladders disappeared. The rooms stood empty. Yet unlike many abandoned cities, Mesa Verde was not destroyed. The cliffs protected it. The dry climate preserved it. And for centuries the ancient dwellings remained hidden among the canyons. Imagine a traveller discovering the site long after its abandonment. The stone buildings still stand. The rooms remain intact. The silence is overwhelming. It feels as though the inhabitants might return at any moment. That sense of presence still exists today. Visitors often describe Mesa Verde as one of the most haunting archaeological sites they have ever seen. Not because it is frightening, but because it feels so human. The homes, the passageways, the gathering spaces all remind us that real families once lived here. Real people built these communities with their own hands, and perhaps that is what makes Mesa Verde so remarkable. Because hidden within the cliffs of the American Southwest is a city that seems to defy belief. A city carved into the landscape. A city abandoned but never forgotten. And a city whose stone walls continue to tell the story of a people who mastered one of the most challenging environments on Earth. Cahokia Mounds. The lost city, bigger than London. When most people think of ancient cities, they imagine Egypt, Rome, or Mesopotamia. They picture pyramids, temples, and stone monuments rising from the landscape. Very few imagine that nearly 1,000 years ago, one of the largest cities on Earth stood in the heart of North America. A city filled with thousands of people. A city connected by trade routes stretching for hundreds of miles. A city crowned by enormous earthen monuments that still dominate the landscape today. This place was Cahokia, and for centuries its story was almost forgotten. Imagine arriving here around the year 1100 AD. The scene before you is astonishing. Thousands of homes spread across the horizon, smoke rises from cooking fires, people move through busy plazas, merchants exchange goods brought from distant regions. The city is alive with activity. At its height, Cahokia may have been home to more than 20,000 people, making it larger than many European cities of the same period. In fact, it may have been larger than London itself. Yet unlike the stone cities of Europe or the Middle East, Cahokia was built primarily from earth. The city's most famous features are its enormous mounds. These were not natural hills. They were carefully constructed by human hands. Basket after basket of soil was carried and piled into place over generations. The largest of them all is known as Monk's Mound. Even today, it towers above the surrounding landscape. Standing atop it offers a view across a city that once served as the centre of a vast and influential culture. Imagine the effort required to build such a monument. Thousands of workers carrying soil, leaders organising massive construction projects, entire communities contributing labour over many years. The result was one of the largest earthworks ever created in the ancient world. And Monk's Mound was only one part of a much larger city. Around it stood plazas, neighbourhoods, ceremonial spaces, and dozens of other mounds. Some supported important buildings, others may have served religious or political functions. Together they formed a landscape unlike anything else in North America. Imagine walking through Cahokia during its height. The central plaza stretches before you. People gather for ceremonies and festivals. Children play near homes made from wood and clay. Leaders oversee activities from structures built atop the mounds. The city feels organised, powerful, prosperous. This was not a small settlement hidden in the wilderness. It was a major urban centre, one of the greatest cities ever built north of Mexico before European arrival. Yet many mysteries remain. Who exactly governed Cahokia? How was such a large population organised? What beliefs inspired the construction of the Great Mounds? The people who built the city left no written records. Their answers have not survived. Only the landscape remains. Archaeologists have discovered evidence of extensive trade networks connecting Cahokia to distant regions. Materials arrived from hundreds of miles away. Ideas travelled with them. The city became a crossroads where different communities and cultures interacted. Its influence extended far beyond its borders. For centuries, Cahokia flourished. Generations lived and worked among the mounds. Then, gradually, something changed. The reasons remain debated. Environmental pressures may have affected agriculture. Political tensions may have emerged. Resources may have become increasingly difficult to manage. Perhaps several factors combined together. Whatever happened, the population slowly declined. Neighbourhoods were abandoned. Public spaces grew quiet. The great city began to fade. Imagine the final generations living among the mounds. Buildings once filled with activity now stand empty. The crowds are smaller. The city that had dominated the region for centuries is changing. Eventually, many people leave. The plazas fall silent. Nature begins reclaiming the landscape, and one of North America's greatest cities disappears from history. For centuries the mounds remained, covered in grass, standing quietly beside the Mississippi River. Travelers passed by them without fully understanding what they represented. The memory of the city slowly faded, yet the earth never forgot. Today, Cahokia remains one of the most important archaeological sites in the United States. Researchers continue uncovering new clues about the people who built it and the society they created. Every discovery reveals a civilization far more complex than many once imagined, and perhaps that is what makes Cahokia so fascinating. Because hidden beneath grassy mounds lies the story of a city that rivaled the great urban centres of its age. A city built from earth instead of stone. A city that rose to extraordinary heights, and a city whose mysteries continue to echo across the American landscape nearly 1,000 years after its people disappeared. Meadows, the Viking settlement at the edge of the world. For centuries, people believed that the story of European exploration in North America began with Christopher Columbus. It was a simple story, a familiar story, and for a long time, few questioned it. Then, on the windswept coast of Newfoundland, archaeologists uncovered evidence that changed history, evidence that showed Europeans had crossed the Atlantic nearly 500 years earlier, evidence of a small settlement built by Vikings at the very edge of the known world. This place is known as Meadows, and it remains one of the most remarkable archaeological discoveries ever made. Imagine standing here around the year 1000 AD. The North Atlantic stretches endlessly toward the horizon. Cold winds sweep across the coastline. The sea is unpredictable. The land feels distant from everything familiar. Yet despite the isolation, a group of Norse explorers has arrived. Their ships rest near the shore. Homes are being constructed. Tools strike wood and iron. A new settlement is taking shape. These people had travelled farther west than any Europeans before them. The journey itself was extraordinary. Starting from Scandinavia, Norse sailors expanded across the North Atlantic. They settled Iceland. They established colonies in Greenland. And eventually explorers pushed even farther west into lands described in the Icelandic sagas. For centuries, many historians wondered whether those stories were based on real events. Meadows provided the answer. Imagine arriving with the first expedition. After weeks at sea, unfamiliar land finally appears on the horizon. Forests cover the coastline. Fresh water is plentiful. Resources seem abundant. Compared to Greenland, the landscape feels almost welcoming. The explorers decide to stay. They build homes using techniques familiar from their homeland. Wooden structures rise from the grasslands. Workshops are established. Daily life begins. One of the most fascinating aspects of the settlement is how ordinary it appears. This was not a grand city, not a powerful kingdom, not a monumental fortress. It was a small community, a practical outpost built by people trying to survive in an unfamiliar land. And perhaps that makes the discovery even more remarkable. Archaeologists found the remains of Norse-style buildings, ironworking evidence, tools and other artifacts linking the settlement directly to Viking culture. The evidence was undeniable. Long before Columbus sailed across the Atlantic, Norse explorers had already reached North America. Imagine the sounds of the settlement, axes striking timber, voices speaking Old Norse, the crackling of fires inside turf-covered buildings, ships being repaired near the shore. The people living here stood at the frontier of the known world. Beyond them lay vast lands no European maps had ever recorded. Yet life here was not easy. The climate could be harsh. Supplies were limited. The settlement remained far from other Norse communities. Every resource had to be carefully managed. Every winter brought new challenges. Researchers believe the settlement was occupied for only a relatively short period. Why it was abandoned remains uncertain. Distance may have played a role. Maintaining contact with Greenland was difficult. Conflicts with local indigenous peoples may have created additional challenges, or perhaps the costs simply outweighed the benefits. Whatever the reason, the settlers eventually left. The building stood empty, the fires went out, and the settlement disappeared from history. For nearly 1,000 years, the wind swept across the coastline. Grass covered the remains. The world forgot the settlement existed. Meanwhile, the old Norse sagas survived. Stories of distant lands across the ocean. Stories many people dismissed as legend. Then, in the 20th century, archaeologists uncovered the truth hidden beneath the soil. The sagas had been pointing toward a real place all along. Imagine the excitement of that discovery. A missing chapter of history suddenly confirmed, proof that Viking explorers had reached North America centuries before anyone thought possible. The find transformed our understanding of exploration and the medieval world. Today, visitors standing at Meadows often notice the silence. The ocean remains, the winds remain, the landscape feels much as it did 1,000 years ago. It is easy to imagine a longship appearing on the horizon, easy to imagine explorers stepping ashore for the first time, and perhaps that is what makes Meadows so fascinating. Because on a remote Canadian coastline lies evidence of one of history's greatest journeys, a settlement at the edge of the known world, a place where Vikings crossed an ocean and reached a new continent, and a place that reminds us that history is often far more surprising than we imagine. Cerén, the ancient city built from mud. On the edge of the Sahara Desert stands a city unlike any other on Earth. Its walls are not made of stone, its towers are not built from marble, and its most famous monument is constructed almost entirely from mud. Yet for centuries, this city stood at the centre of one of Africa's greatest trading networks, a place where merchants, scholars, travellers, and pilgrims crossed paths in a world connected by desert roads. This place is Cerén, and its story begins long before many of the great cities of Europe reached their peak. Imagine arriving here nearly 1,000 years ago. The heat of West Africa hangs in the air. The nearby floodplains provide fertile land for farming. Caravans appear on the horizon carrying salt, gold, cloth, and other valuable goods. Merchants arrive from distant regions. Languages mix in busy marketplaces. The city is alive with movement, alive with opportunity, and alive with knowledge. Cerén occupied one of the most important locations in medieval West Africa. Trade routes connected the city to distant kingdoms and communities across the Sahara. Goods flowed through its markets, ideas travelled alongside them. Over time, Cerén became one of the region's great centres of commerce and learning. Imagine walking through its streets during its height. The market is crowded with traders. Farmers arrive with produce from surrounding villages. Craftsmen shape tools, jewellery and pottery. Scholars discuss religion and philosophy. The city feels connected to a much larger world. One of the most remarkable features of Cerén is its architecture. For centuries, builders used earth as their primary construction material. Walls were formed from sun-dried mud bricks. Buildings rose from the landscape in warm shades of brown. Far from being temporary structures, many endured for generations. They were perfectly adapted to the local environment. The most famous structure of all is the Great Mosque of Cerén. Its massive walls and towering forms dominate the city skyline. At first glance, it seems almost impossible that a building of such scale could be made from mud, yet it has become one of the most recognizable landmarks in Africa. Imagine seeing it for the first time. The structure rises above the surrounding city. Wooden beams project from its walls. The sunlight casts long shadows across its surface. It appears both ancient and timeless, a building unlike any other in the world. Yet what makes the mosque truly extraordinary is not only its appearance. It is the way the community continues to care for it. Each year, residents gather to repair and maintain the structure. Fresh mud is applied where needed. Generations participate together. The building survives not only because it was well designed, but because the community continues to protect it. That tradition has continued for centuries. Imagine the city during the height of the Mali Empire. Caravans arrive carrying gold from the south and salt from the desert. News from distant lands spreads through the markets. Travellers bring stories from places hundreds of miles away. Cerén thrives as a centre of trade and culture. Its influence reaches far beyond its walls. Yet like many historic cities, its fortunes changed over time. Trade routes shifted, political powers rose and fell, new centres emerged elsewhere. The city adapted, survived, and continued forward. Through every change, Cerén remained. Its buildings weathered the seasons, its people preserved their traditions, its story endured. Archaeologists have discovered that the history of Cerén stretches back even further than many once believed. Beneath the modern city lie traces of much older settlements, generations built upon the work of those who came before. Layer after layer of history accumulated beneath the soil. Each discovery reveals another chapter of a story thousands of years long. Imagine standing in Cerén at sunset. The golden light reflects off the mud brick walls. The sounds of the market begin to fade. Shadows stretch across the streets. For a moment, it becomes easy to imagine merchants from centuries ago walking the same paths, hearing the same sounds, watching the same sunset. And perhaps that is what makes Djenné so remarkable. Because unlike many ancient cities that survive only as ruins, Djenné remains alive. A city shaped by trade, a city built from earth, and a city that continues to preserve the traditions of one of Africa's most remarkable civilizations. Its walls may be made of mud, but its story has endured for centuries. Murujuga, the ancient art gallery of stone. On a remote stretch of Australia's northwest coast lies one of the oldest and largest collections of rock art on Earth. Thousands upon thousands of images cover the landscape. Animals, human figures, mysterious symbols. Stories carved into stone long before the first pyramids rose in Egypt, long before Stonehenge appeared in Britain, long before many of the world's earliest civilizations were born. This place is known as Murujuga, and it preserves a record of human history unlike anywhere else on Earth. Imagine arriving here tens of thousands of years ago. The landscape looks very different. Sea levels are lower. The coastline extends much farther into the distance. Large animals roam the region. Groups of people travel across the land, hunting, gathering and sharing stories beneath the vast Australian sky. Over generations, they begin leaving marks on the stone, images carved into rock surfaces, messages for the future, records of a world that would eventually disappear. Today, Murujuga contains more than 1 million petroglyphs. That number is almost difficult to comprehend. Across hillsides, valleys and rocky outcrops, ancient carvings appear in every direction. Some are small and simple, others are detailed and complex. Together, they form one of humanity's greatest artistic archives. Imagine standing among these stones thousands of years ago. A person carefully chips away at the dark surface of a rock. Slowly, an image begins to appear. Perhaps it represents an animal seen during a hunt. Perhaps it records a story passed down through generations. Perhaps it marks a sacred place within the landscape. The meaning may have been obvious to the people who created it. Today, many of those meanings remain hidden. One of the most fascinating aspects of Murujuga is its age. Some carvings may be tens of thousands of years old. If so, they would rank among the oldest surviving artistic traditions anywhere on Earth. Few places offer such a direct connection to humanity's distant past. And because people continued creating rock art here over many thousands of years, the site contains layers of history unlike almost any other. Imagine walking through the landscape. One carving depicts animals that still exist today. Another may represent creatures that disappeared long ago. Some images show human figures. Others reveal objects, tracks, and symbols whose meanings are still debated. Each carving is a small piece of a much larger story, a story spanning countless generations. The artists who created these images left no written explanations, no books, no monuments describing their intentions. The carvings themselves are the message, and after thousands of years, many parts of that message remain mysterious. Yet that mystery is part of what makes Murujuga so extraordinary. It reminds us that human history did not begin with written records. For most of our existence, stories were preserved through memory, art and tradition. Murujuga offers a rare glimpse into that world. Imagine sunset over the rocky landscape. The stone glows beneath the fading light. Ancient carvings emerge from the shadows, the same images that countless generations have seen before, the same images that survived changing climates, rising seas, and thousands of years of history. Few places on Earth possess such continuity. Few places connect us so directly to people who lived in a world unimaginably distant from our own. And yet, despite decades of research, many questions remain. Who created the earliest carvings? What stories do they tell? How much knowledge has been lost over time? Archaeologists continue searching for answers, but the stones reveal their secrets slowly. Perhaps they always will. And maybe that is what makes Murujuga so captivating. Because hidden among the rocks of Australia's northwest coast lies one of humanity's greatest archives, not written on paper, not carved into monuments, but etched directly into the landscape itself. A gallery of stone, a record of countless generations, and a place where the voices of the distant past can still be heard if we take the time to listen. And that brings us to the end of tonight's journey. From villages buried beneath the sand to cities hidden among cliffs, from ancient fortresses and forgotten kingdoms to some of the oldest artwork ever created, we've explored remarkable places that continue to challenge what we know about the past. Some of their secrets have been uncovered, many remain unsolved, and perhaps that's what makes these places so fascinating. If you enjoyed this journey, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe for more stories from the ancient world. And before you go, let me know in the comments which place fascinated you the most. Thank you for joining me on this journey through history. Until our next adventure into the past, stay curious.